It's 2:05 according to my clock. I'm Deborah Turner. I'm from Kentucky and a member of the Volunteer Facilitation and Training Team nationally. I am a proud co-leader of the exchange along with Dr. Mary Clark. Today, our topic is designing work for volunteer involvement. And I know sometimes we talk about job descriptions for volunteers, but of course, if you're a volunteer like me, you know we don't get paid. So job descriptions probably are not the best titles, but we can call them position descriptions, we can call them role descriptions. But the point is to make sure that when we're working with people like me, people like Dr. Mary, that we've got some idea about what we want us to, what you want us to do, what expectations there are. And so that's our topic for today, is designing work for volunteer involvement. We're hoping you will share what you have found out, or if you've got documents to share, we're looking for those. Comments. This is a staff and volunteer forum, so all comments are welcome and appreciated and encouraged. So if something triggers a thought, please just come off mute and or raise your hand, do something to get our attention. We'll try to make sure that, if you put it in the chat, we'll go back to you if possible, or share that with other folks. So Dr. Mary, I believe you have the first question for today.
Yes, thank you. And I am pleased to be here always with you, Deborah, and everyone who joins us. And I sent a message to everyone, I think, to either rename yourself and put your name after the state that you represent after your name, or you can put it in the chat. We like to know who's in the room, and we also like to just do a call out to those who we know like to be called out because they represent states that we love. So I see many states represented as I get ready to ask my first question, which is many questions about volunteer involvement. So, and I know Kathy Kynes is going to do the honors of typing some of what I said after I repeated a couple of times. So, how does one go about developing a position description for volunteers that's meaningful? Let me repeat that again. How does one develop a position description that provides a meaningful volunteer experience? Because as volunteers, we want to know what the parameters are, and usually those parameters can come in a position description. Additionally, as you're thinking about that, what should a workable position description include? And how long is too long? And I can tell you right now, if it's longer than 2 pages, that's long. That's a lot. That's work. And we are volunteers. We are not working. So I'm going to allow others to talk. And thank you so much, everybody, for responding in the chat where you're zooming in from. Who has something they want to say about those questions that I've asked? Anybody have some position descriptions that you just think are fabulous that you want to share? Ellen, I see you coming off mute. And your camera's coming on. Does that mean you want to talk?
Sure. I didn't know if I should raise my hand or what I should do. So we recently went through some major changes with executive council position descriptions, and then a few others previously. But what's really worked well for us, and I agree with you, Dr. Mary, on keeping it short, a page or two, is making sure that we passed it by anybody that needed to put their eyes on it, from our state director to volunteers. We got a lot of volunteer involvement and feedback on it. So what rings true to volunteers, what words, what responsibilities and actions are important for them to see on there.
Thank you. And Kelly, I see your hand is up.
Hi, everyone. We are actually, I have a team of 3 volunteers right now who are going through all of our position descriptions and number one, streamlining them because there are a lot of words on our current position descriptions. And they thought the same thing, shorter, better, more concise, and just outline the expectations. The 3 most important sections that they thought are necessary for each position description are responsibilities, qualifications, and term and length of service. Excuse me, I think, there's sort of a template out there floating around in AARP land that is a 2-pager, but this team decided that that second page wasn't really necessary. It'll just be kind of part of our recruitment language, our outreach, and more covered during onboarding. So I am thrilled with them. We got together, I think in November of last year, and we'll be finished up probably by the middle of next month with all of our final. And they're not just updating the ones that we have, they're creating the new ones for like our hub dialer. We're gonna start a volunteer one-day university team, some advocacy cadres. So they are doing the work and I'm loving it. I just check in with them.
Great, thank you. Well, that sounds like some volunteer leadership in action there. Thanks for that example, Kelly. And it looks like Amber has put 3 of their top ones, community ambassador, virtual volunteer, and speakers bureau in the chat. And I saw, let me see, Jackie Boland out of Hawaii has said that I use position summaries for most positions and create specialist positions when needed. And I know what Deborah's going to ask at the end, so I'm just going to ask it now. Any of those that you're willing to share, she will take and put in the portal so that we can all kind of have access to looking at some best practices and some best used ideas. We all love to share. Let me see what else someone says. So Amber said also that they've been using the same versions for several years and they haven't thought about updating them. But I know the virtual volunteer is something that is relatively new during the pandemic. So thank you for sharing that example.
Can I just say that our virtual volunteer newsroom, it's actually been around before the pandemic.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They're like volunteer reporters and promoters.
Ah,
So
okay.
it's virtual. I'm not sure why we call it virtual because it's not really a newsroom, right? It's like we don't have a newsroom. It's virtually a newsroom. That they've been around beforehand, right? This made me think maybe we should update some of our position descriptions.
And
I don't honestly get too hung up on position descriptions. That's just my take on it. I don't sit a volunteer down. I think it's a good guideline, but not something that I'm gonna take one to task to say like you're not fulfilling 3 of the 4 descriptions. So
thank you for sharing. And I think many of us, Jackie, I'll let you talk instead of me. So go ahead, Jackie.
I was just going to say, I use those position summaries, but what I find is that unless you have a volunteer who's going to be initiating something on their own and they don't have a group that they're working with, those positions are sort of just telling them what bucket they're going to go into. And so the most important thing is how they're onboarded and what they're given to do right away. And I just want to mention, I just did this thing with my whole community outreach team on Oahu, which is about 99 volunteers. And so we had this huge list of volunteers, but then when a leader would need something done, they'd have to reach out to a very large group. So what we did is we have sub-leaders within that for tabling, movies for grown-ups, local service projects and local tours and events. And so I basically did a form to them, and I had them sign up for all that they would help with and which one. So, and I just said, I want to give these volunteers a list with your name on it for anything they can call you about. And you're going to know that they're calling you because you said that you were interested in this, right? And then I just had another column that said, would you do pre-event work on this? So instead of just showing up, would you get food? Would you pick up supplies, whatever? And I think this is the most organized we've ever been. And the volunteer leaders now have a list of people who are very responsive to them, and they're not wasting a lot of time.
Wow. Well, I know I hang out in a lot of Hawaii events, and I know that they are well organized, like all of the ones across the US. And I'm always impressed by my volunteer colleagues and their leadership. So whatever the position summary or descriptions that we have leading our charge, it looks like we are able to effectively do our work. But I'm open to hear what anyone else has to say as far as what they have. And I know there was a request for, I think from Susan, for sharing, and I will make that additional request that if you have any other sample templates that you want to share, you can either send them to Deborah or you can put them in the chat and we will put those in the portal. Let me see. Oh, I just want to also do a shout out to Amber, who's celebrating her special birthday on this day of red and hearts and love. So happy birthday, Amber.
Thank you.
A little bird shared that with me. So a little bird with a Southern accent.
Thank you. Fun day to have a birthday.
Anyone else want to share? Let me see if I'm missing something in the chat. If not, Ellen, I can pass it to you. Okay, wait a minute. Okay. Kathy just says that she loves Jackie's idea, and 99 volunteers is an amazing number of volunteers. Yes, I agree. Ellen, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Okay, and before you do that, before Ellen takes over here, I just want to say there is a group called Volunteer Pro, and I know I've mentioned them before, but they produce a blog that provides information. The person who's in charge of the group, the CEO, is Toby Johnson. And they write things all the time about volunteer job descriptions, recruitments, and most of their materials are free. There is something that's available that I'm going to put out on the portal called 10 must-haves for a well-crafted volunteer job description, after just saying we're not calling them job descriptions, but there is material available. And if you look, and I'm sure most of you probably have looked at what AARP.org is using for job descriptions or about the opportunities that are out there, I don't see any of those that are 2 pages long, even though I know, Ellen, you mentioned that the template may be that long, but the position information that's out there is usually pretty quick. You know, what do people want to get done? What is, the qualification? Where is the site going to be? And then how long is this going to last? Is it a 2-year, 10-year, or 6-minute, commitment? So, Kelly, you've got your hand up, huh?
Yeah, I just building on that, Deborah, there's also an organization called volunteermatch.org, and they have free webinars, and one that was available right before I launched this project with this volunteer team was how to write a position description. So they're free, excuse me, throughout the year, and they also keep those recordings so anybody can go check those out.
Great. Thank you very much. Now, Ellen.
Okay, so the question I have for the group, and I think this could go in all kinds of directions. How do you manage expectations for volunteer performance? So I'll start with something that's pretty easy. We've gone back and forth lately with just even monitoring and knowing what volunteers are doing as far as even how much, are they involved? Are they engaged? So I guess my question, does anyone use the volunteer hours in the portal to track this? Or if you don't, what other systems or how else do you keep track of if you have a large volunteer corps, what are you using to keep track of what they're doing and how involved they are?
Jackie, I want to call on you simply because you mentioned you had 99 volunteers at one point. Are you doing some tracking of their hours in the system?
No, I've thought about it before. And in fact, in the last 3 years, when I started recruiting, I did put an hour expectation out to new recruits just so that I wouldn't waste anybody's time. And I basically tell all general volunteers coming in that we may not call on them, but we want them to mentally be available 4 hours a month. If they don't have 4 hours a month, then I just tell them I don't think they have time to volunteer for us, and that they can always contact us when they do. And that's simply because for many years we had a huge list of over 400 volunteers, and we would call them and it would almost be like we were talking to strangers sometimes. So now everybody on our roster on for community outreach and even advocacy, the lowest level advocacy person, if they attend the 2 meetings a month that are held on Zoom and write testimony, that's going to be 4 hours as well. So that's kind of our threshold. We don't track it. But what we do is for our CPs, which community presence teams, we actually meet every month. And I know who's working on what. We do after action reports on anything that's big or new. And then I submit, weekly management reports to my director, and I ask all the leads to submit to me a paragraph about what they achieved that week, if anything, and which volunteers were involved with it. So anecdotally, I kind of know who's doing what and who's not doing anything. And then also, I sent out that community outreach survey I mentioned to my 99 volunteers, and I get 70 responses back. So then I look at the 29 that didn't, and I see, 12 of them just did the home show last week, but what about those other ones? And I kind of will follow up with them and just see if they've got a project, if they feel, like they feel disconnected, or if they're working on something. So I kind of do it through leaders and their relationships, and then just the after action reports. And then our smaller teams, East Hawaii and Maui, we literally at every meeting, our meeting format is first we do a check-in on what just happened, and then we move forward to planning for the future. So we're always doubling back to see how we can improve who was involved. Everyone gets a chance to talk if they want to.
Great.
Brenda has her hand up.
Hi, I'm Brenda from Michigan, the ASD in the Detroit area. And my colleagues, my other ASDs, do track the hours. We encourage our volunteers to put their hours in the portal. That's not a total way to track, because a lot don't go into the portal, but we're really driving that this year. But I also keep an Excel document to track who volunteers for what. That gives me an idea of who's interested in what, but also who has participated. And one of the reasons why we track is because there are certain events that come up in the year, like AARP College, where we want to make sure that those volunteers who have engaged the most get the opportunity to do the overnights and engage in certain activities where we only have limited seats. So that's another reason for trying to keep track. So, this year is a new year for all of us as far as being able to be engaged. So I think that we will definitely be reinforcing that volunteers keep up with their hours and the 5-hour hour. And we know when people can't volunteer, they may have exceptional things going on in their life, but there's rationale for us to keep track of the hours.
Great. Thank you, Brenda. Kelly's got her hand up.
For most of our meetings, volunteer meetings and larger events, we just use Cvent and track it through that. So that's become a standard practice for us, even if it's a meeting of 3 or 4 volunteers, like our, one of our leadership teams or something like that. We just use Cvent, and that also, if it's virtual, that just allows the Zoom link to go right out to them with that integration. So that one's been pretty successful for us. And then just, I think Jackie said, just kind of that anecdotal, maybe it wasn't Jackie, sorry, but the anecdotal feedback from the ASDs as they're out working in the communities.
Kelly, I would like to add, I'm starting to use Cvent this year too. I like it as a way to track for our volunteer meetings, etc.
Yeah, it's real easy.
And I see in the chat, Deborah, that Tawana Wright, that they are using the volunteer portal, and maybe Tawana might talk about how they've been successful using that, since Amber says that they don't use the VP tracking. So it's always good to hear those that are successful in using that. If you want to speak, Tawana.
I could just expand on that. What if you're having success with volunteers using the time tracking in the portal? How did you do that? How did you make it so that they want to go in and spend the extra time to do it?
I'm sorry, I was looking for you in Teams and we're in Zoom.
Right.
My volunteers have actually, one of the volunteers is a portal champion. And so she's been teaching on a regular basis at our member meetings how to use the portal, so they can bring their laptop or their device and get additional help at the meetings, the monthly meetings. So that's worked out well for us.
That's a great way to do it. And especially because many of us probably have, if not a portal champion, someone who's very tech savvy and enjoys sharing their information about using the portal with other volunteers. So I commend Tawana's volunteers for doing that.
Where do you see anyone else? Because I'm not looking at that. We're ready to move on to another additional question?
If you wish.
Okay. So along the same lines, as far as volunteer performance, I guess we went a little down into the time, but how about opportunities for growth? If they're regular volunteers with you and they're doing one thing, as we talked about from the position descriptions, but maybe they're interested in other things. So how do people go about directing or making sure that volunteers know that they can do other things, or there is growth involved?
We've got Alan, you've got your hand up.
Well, this is back on the previous thing. While I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, I don't, in other words, I'm on the driver safety side, and so I have instructors out instructing classes. And I realize, I'm not following up with them what they do and, how a given class went. And if I do that, then I can share that with the other volunteers and how they're, and so I think this is one of the things that we're trying to do within Kansas is to build a team. And it's been a struggle because of COVID, like everybody else, is to build a team. And I'm just not, it's basically my fault because I'm not communicating with the other people as to what's going on. And you guys, I mean, that's the reason why I guess I'm here at the meeting. You guys have stirred me on to get that done.
Great. And hopefully we're going to provide some tools. People are sharing information that you can use to do that. Thank you very much, Alan.
I'm going to say, I saw somebody put something in the comments about personalized approach. There seems to be a lot of structure. What's actually worked, I always say this to our team, COVID worked in our favor. And I'm in a position in our state that I work with all of our volunteers across the state. But again, going back to our executive council that we've done a lot of rebuilding with. So I am in touch with all of our active volunteers. And then I do have help. I have volunteer assistance as far as even our executive council members. Our state president is really good with follow-up and picking up the phone and calling people. So the personal approach really does work well. It takes time, it takes picking up the phone. But with that, I think there's huge rewards to be reaped. I mean, a lot of our volunteers, I think some people were speaking a little bit earlier about kind of structured positions, things like that. A lot of our volunteers actually do a little bit of a lot of things. So they're involved in advocacy, but they also will show up and help with tabling events. And that's only beneficial to us because they know so much about everything that we're working on. And there's not a lot of training because they're participating and involved so much. So the personalized, yeah, I 100% agree with the personalized approach and finding people that are interested to find out what other volunteers are thinking. Sometimes other volunteers will talk to other volunteers, we know this, easier than they will with staff too.
Great. Thank you, Ellen.
Ellie has a question in chat about how do you direct volunteers when they call up prospects? Do they have a list of upcoming meetings and activities and opportunities? What if a prospect is interested in an opportunity that the volunteer isn't as familiar with?
That is a really good question, and it leads me into something that I'm experiencing today. I have a person who called me last night and said, I'd like to possibly volunteer, but I need to know some things about the group because they talked to a friend who hasn't actually been to an orientation, but is interested in also being a part of the group. So I'm sitting here, as Kelly is doing at this point, trying to figure out what do I tell the person that gives them enough information that says you can come, but then they're not ready for a job description. They're just wanting to come into the organization. And it's more than what's on the website, but it's less than what you pass for orientation or fast track or something like that. So if somebody's got a suggestion for Kelly, maybe you've got a suggestion for me too. Because she wants me to call her back on Friday.
Well, I like what Jackie put in the chat, that all volunteering is personal. And she keeps that in mind because as volunteers, we're giving time, but we want a relationship back of some sort. And I think that spans the spectrum. Some volunteers are more social than others. So in that instance, those volunteers would relish to have many opportunities to interact, where some volunteers, like myself, I'm a little more introspective. I like relationships, but I like them to be meaningful, and they might be situational to whatever the assignment is. But over time, relationships established. So keeping that in mind, we have volunteers that span the scope of wanting relationships, but that is important for us to know what our volunteers' strengths and likes are, so that when a question comes up about a prospective volunteer, we can perhaps connect them with a current volunteer who has similar likes, interests to them, so that they can help in paving the way for their entrance into the possible AA volunteer role, AARP volunteer role.
I'm gonna go back to the personal approach, Deborah. So we do a few things in Illinois. We have a regular advocacy group meeting. So I invite any prospective volunteers who are interested in our issue areas, our advocacy, to that call. And I ask them just to simply sit and listen, hear what we're talking about. They don't have to put themselves on camera even. It's a Zoom meeting. So they can just hear what we're talking about. And it's super engaging. All the volunteers talk so they can hear what people are talking about. If they're just not sure what they're interested in, maybe it's like events, tabling, things like that, and they've been referred to us, or somebody's reached out, or a friend. We've had people that bring a friend along to like an easy touch, a play or something like that, and then their friend is really interested in what we are doing and how we did it. The friend is there to simply kind of help hand out things. They don't have to speak about AARP, but that is such a buy-in. I've had one volunteer tell me, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I love what you guys are doing. But a lot of it was about the personal approach and just being there and involved and being able to witness it firsthand. So as much as we want to put them in training right away or orientation, sometimes it's even being able to have them do the personal, the hands-on, or even the interactive approach. And, shout out to Fast Track, because I do ask all of our volunteers to go, and I've even asked some of our older volunteers who haven't done stuff with us in a little while to go to that. And I get great feedback from that. People love it.
Right. Okay.
And Deborah, did you see Jackie asked about Kentucky's most amazing welcome wagon approach? Are you still doing that?
Well, yes, sort of. Yes, we are. We are.
I'm only asking because I remember Patrice Blanchard used to have such great success with that, and I'm actually trying to put together a couple of welcome wagon committees on different islands, and I was wondering if it was still working.
It does still work, and actually I consider it really successful, because a lot of the people who came through that are still the people who are probably the most engaged in the team. So I think that's what we want. Tahisha is on here, and I'm sure she would probably say the same thing, because she looks around the team and they're pretty good people.
Well, I am so sorry to admit that I don't know what the welcome wagon was. I apologize.
It's our mentoring approach.
Oh, yes, we do have that. Yes. Okay, yes.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. So thank you very much for bringing that up again. Okay. So I guess we need to move on to our next question. And I guess I've got that one. What sources of support have any of you identified to help you involve volunteers in a more effective or efficient way? Any thoughts?
Deborah, could you repeat that, please?
Sure. What sources of support have you identified to help you involve volunteers more effectively or efficiently. And this gets us back to things like, do you have a budget for development of skills? Have you created that for volunteers? Or is it something you'd like to have? And if there was a budget specifically for skill development, how would you use it? What would be the first thing you'd do? That's about 3 questions in one. Any thoughts on?
I don't know if this fits with what you're saying, and I think your question might be geared more toward volunteers, but for me, the most critical tool, or 3, 1, briefing sheets for volunteers who are doing tabling events or movies or whatever. I always do a briefing sheet that tells them what the goal is, what the resources are for it, who the emergency contacts are, what the member hook is, all of that. And then I give that to the volunteers who, when they're leading ones that I'm not involved with, and they just use it as a template. Second, I templated the monthly meeting agenda for the team so that the team leaders can just change out the objectives or tweak them, but follow a format so they don't have to reinvent it every time. And I also did the same with the meeting notes format so that the notes are meaningful and they're not like minute by minute notes, but they're who agreed to do what kind of notes and what was, a summary of the discussion. I think by templating those things and using them consistently, along with the same sort of after action questions, you create a expectation of how business will be done that permeates to every level. So the volunteers always know what the business objective is. And then we always try to get to know everybody better. We always do it, so they perpetuate it.
Great. Does anyone else have some way to brief or prepare their volunteers before they go out? What are they doing?
I
Hi,
love
Jack.
the briefing. Oh, go ahead. I'll defer.
No, I was going to say I like the briefing as well. Hi, this is Hillary Johnson with Georgia. One of the things we're creating, similar to that briefing book she was talking about, we're doing something called a playbook. And it's a book that will have a lot of different information in it so that it's something that they can say, okay, maybe I don't have the answer to this, but the playbook should have it in there, and giving them free range to tell us things that they want in the playbook. And what I mean by the playbook is, what is our, the issues that we're, advocating for this year? What are some of our wins from last year? So everything that they can think of that they may need is part of our playbook. So it's a one little book that kind of covers a lot of things. Oh, if I'm going out to do tabling, what does that look like? What needs to be there? What's the checklist? But it's almost a catch-all for everything so that it's not where they have to find it, or they can find it in this one playbook of how to do things. So something that we're creating that the volunteers ask for. And I probably just stress this as much as I can with ours is, if you don't tell us what you need, we can't provide those sources for you. So to keep the doors open to just find a way to give feedback on a regular basis and get the information. This playbook came from after not being, in person. A lot of people said a lot of things that they wanted to see that were not there anymore. But as far as even all the staff pictures, who and what exactly focus area they have. So if they are out somewhere, they say, oh, call Hillary Johnson. She's over this volunteer piece. She can help you. But then they feel like they're truly an ambassador for us and feel that they have the knowledge to give the information wherever they are to provide it.
Great. Thank you, Hillary. Now, Kelly, I think you were going to say something as well.
I was just gonna say I love the one-page briefing piece, the briefing sheet, and now the playbook. So I'm going to use both of those.
All
Um,
right.
thank you both. And also, for like a larger event, our state fair specifically, we have a specific orientation with our volunteers for that because it's a big lift. There are a lot of moving pieces. So we set aside time, and we do, as we've done with some things in the past, we always have one evening session via Zoom so that anybody who's working can participate in one of those sessions.
When you're doing, I know state fairs are always a great big situation. For signups, what are you using for that? I don't know if this is an aside or not.
Yeah, we use Cvent. So we use
Okay.
it with the sessions. Yep. It's my favorite
Scheduling,
tool.
CVET.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's my favorite
Okay.
tool that I hate.
That you love to hate. Great.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kelly. Becky, you've got your hand up.
I do. I haven't been joining for a while, missing Sarah a lot. I'm from Oregon, and what we do is on our onboarding, we've just been working on the process review. We've been adding a volunteer buddy so that they go through the orientation with the new volunteer, and then they continue on going directly into their interests and skills.
Great. And that's working out for you well?
So far, yes. This is a new, we've been toying around with the idea, but we've just implemented it lately. So it's still new, but I'm sure it's going to be a success. It just has to be.
Well, and it's back to more of that personal connection.
It is.
Reinforcing that.
Yeah, when you've got similar interests and skills levels or background, it kind of helps bring you into what you really want to do. And then once you're settled, you can explore other avenues. That's what I did when I first joined AARP many years ago. And then focused in on one area and then just expanded it.
Yeah. So. Understand. Thank you very much. And it looks like Hillary, who was speaking a moment ago, she's put in the chat that Georgia has a buddy program as well. Hillary, did you want to mention anything else about that?
One of the things I like, similar to what Ms. Becky just said, was it actually takes it off the plate of the staff partner as well, because then it just frees them up for a volunteer to volunteer experience for the buddy. So ours, and some people may have more than one, and they want to know like a duration. So we give them, to say, if you want to be a buddy, we're asking you to do it for at least a year. Or so also the big thing that they brought up this year was the buddy to train the buddy. So that person that they were bringing on, they want to train them also to be a buddy moving forward.
All right. So we get some continuity there. All right. Thank you. Jackie, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to echo that buddy situation. I think it works really well. One of our new volunteers who's now leading one of our legislative advocacy teams, I joined her through the Building Better Teams. And we had a good time. It was fun. And thank you, Tara. And we really just got to know each other really well through that. And that partnership was great. A couple of other things. If people aren't getting the OVE newsletter, you should be getting it, because it has so much information in there and so much, so many ways that you can actually get training. And I think we're going from this point forward, we're going to be starting our newbies on fast track, just so that they have a really good sense of the organization. That is so beautifully done by Bettina and Bob. And actually, it's fun. And I keep signing up every month, and they don't record it, which is good because they interact so much with every new group that they have. And I swear I have learned something new every time I attend one of those. So I sign up, they do master classes in between that have to do with recruiting and retention. And I can't say enough about that. And that was developed, folks, by volunteers for volunteers through the Volts. So I think it's great. And I encourage everybody to take every one of the classes and all the master classes and just get ready to have fun for an hour because it's really great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. And we've now reached at the end of this exciting and interesting conversation. This is the end of our time today. So I appreciate all of you coming. Dr. Mary, I'm sure we're all just so excited that you were here and were able to share some information. We're going to try to put all of this, the copies that we've gotten and the things that people have promised, in the Exchange chatter group, which is on the portal. And we'll redo this recording in YouTube, and you'll get that later on in the week. So thank you all very much. And our next topic is in March, and it's March 14th, not Valentine's Day, but it's recognizing and retaining volunteers. So hope to see you all then. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you all. And if you want to save the chat really quick, for those of you who want to, I know it's always on our recording, but it has a lot of great information in it, including fast track sign up.
Right.
See you all later.
Thank
Happy
you.
Valentine's Day.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
The recording has stopped.
Did you? Okay, I was saying, did you stop it?
No, you can't.
You